Welcome back to another edition of Scaling Secrets podcast. I am your host, Alex Mahaz, and I am really excited today to sit down with Gee Rocourt, the CEO and co-founder of Papa Barkley, a leading company in the cannabis industry with an impressive 25-year career in his field. Gee brings a wealth of expertise and knowledge to the table. His accomplishments and success navigating the ever-evolving cannabis landscape has truly made him an industry pioneer. Get ready as we dive into, cannabis and, learning about his story and, the growth and all the utilization over the years that he's been able to, develop and cultivate. So without further ado, let's welcome Gee to the show. How are you doing, man?
Good, great. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Always excited to talk about cannabis and what we've built here.
Yeah. I'm really excited to dive into it. And obviously, you got a really great track record of experience. But I'm curious. Obviously, being a veteran in the cannabis industry, what are some of those significant changes that you witnessed throughout the 25 years of being in this industry?
So, I've had to experience a lot of patience because there's been a lot of one step forward, two steps back. And even now, as an emerging industry, it's important to remind the listeners that we're still federally prohibited. We still can't claim tax deduction. So as a business, when we talk about like scaling and such, the business is on hard. For those of you who play video games, it's like that last level, extremely obnoxiously hard for no apparent reason. That's how our business is, because on your P&L, your employees are usually the biggest line item, and you deduct those because it's the cost of business. We cannot. So right there, just imagine trying to do a business where you cannot deduct the basic normal deductions, cost of good type deductions. So it's been very interesting. I've been in it since the traditional market when we were providing safe access because people needed it. So beyond just being a business person, I'm a passionate advocate. I think anybody really in cannabis that's doing it the right way still needs to be a passionate advocate. Lastly, I wish I could be like, all positive changes have happened since we've seen these states emerge, but in fact, it's a little bit of the reverse. When we had to struggle for legitimacy, we had to be even better at dotting our I's and crossing our T's and truly having real efficacious plant medicine. When legalization came out, under the guise of scaling and COGS and scalability, we have what I call a race to the bottom, where folks all of a sudden are just like, I need to over refine cannabis and essentially kind of make it look like the products in CVS. My products still smell like cannabis. Of course, many of my first marketers were like, well, it smells a little bit like weed. The consumer's not going to be able to know that. I'm like, it smells better than Ben Gay. It's what it's supposed to smell like. Yep. And we're going to keep it that way. And we've never changed our product. We've never changed our stance on the smell and taste of cannabis, rather to let the community get their game up and get their palate. But unfortunately, a lot of the folks and a lot of the money that's come in is literally just trying to do the active pharmaceutical ingredient and be like, no, look, it smells and looks just like any other product. It just happens to have THC in it. And I'm like, well, we already had that. We need something different. And so now I find myself an advocate for plant medicine, not just cannabis, not just THC, not just CBD, but actual plant medicine where we can really see that this thing that was farmed and all the magical components of that plant medicine are imbued in your gummy, your chocolate, whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think there's so many like little details that go into all those ingredients, and I love how you mentioned that you kept the product the same over the years, and you weren't convinced by how the market was and how all the pharmaceutical companies and how everybody was going about their own way. You just stayed focused with your vision. But I'm curious, like the product development, like how are those early stages when you were developing the product, and did you have a team to kind of help and guide you, or were you kind of a one-man show early on?
Yeah, early on, one-man show, driven by passion. And then eventually, I did build a team, and it's been amazing having a team of makers that and marketers, to be fair, that I've indoctrinated into my kind of like vision of cannabis and passionate ethos to get it done. But in the beginning, the blessing for me of Papa Barkley is it stopped me as a young would-be scientist formulator from doing what everybody else did. My first compliant company actually was in Colorado, right? So so years and years and years ago, it feels like, I saw the first e-cigarette. And of course, like most people, I was like, oh, cannabis needs to be in there. That needs to be weed, right? How do we do that? So myself and my partner, grow partner at the time, endeavored to figure out a basic propylene glycol type weed mix to put in a cartridge. Well, of course, that takes off like gangbusters. And before you know it, around 2011, 2012, I'm getting all these VCs coming out of New York, where I'm originally from, thinking about like, how can we get into this? How can we monetize this? How can we scale this? Right. And I'm like, well, California had just failed on Proposition 19, and I was pretty entrenched and not looking to do anything. They're like, what do you know about Colorado? I'm like, I'm not sure. So they take me out to this lab. I end up building one of the first Class 1 Div 1 labs in Colorado. Definitely a little fake it till you make it, right? But you follow the rules. I can read. I was in the military. I have attention to detail. So we build a C1D1 room. We start blasting light hydrocarbon. We start, distilling. That's when the clear came out. And we're all about over refining cannabis because it's your natural intuition. It's like, for years, I was denied these toys. I couldn't buy a rotovap legitimately without causing suspicion. I couldn't buy a short pass distillation machine without raising suspicion. I definitely couldn't build a C1D1 room. We were blasting outside in the open air to be
Yeah.
safe,
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden, I get money in the bank and I get to buy these tools, right? And I thought I needed them. The beauty about meeting my partner, Papa Barkley, is I realized, wait, whoa, don't need them. I wanted them. And what got us through prohibition, what I had been doing the previous, almost at that point, 15-ish years of my life, was making products that were grown in grandma's garden and made in grandma's kitchen. And I was like, that's the top tier. When I think about everything else in the zeitgeist, food and whatnot, handcrafted with love and all natural, that's already what we want out of CPG. So Papa and Barkley like kind of saved me from what I see everybody else in the industry doing. And so the first few formulations, our hero product, the balm, which we were talking about earlier, the massage oil, the patches, the tinctures, the capsules, all just came from me. Those are pretty basic formulations. As we got into gummies and chocolates and ice water hash, yeah, I started to, luckily we were getting traction. We had money in the bank. And at that time, the investment in cannabis was just like booming. We raised a bunch of capital, and I did get to hire a real chocolatier. I got to hire a real confectionery artist. I partnered with one of the best hash makers, Brady Weaver in California. And so we started to get together. And then my vision around these products was literally plant medicine, right? So we don't use any masking agent, as an example. Cannabis has flavor. In fact, it's really amazing flavors across a myriad of strains. And it was important to me not to cover it up. It's like, I don't believe you're going to a dispensary for a strawberry gummy. If you want a strawberry gummy, go to Sugarfina or whatever. You want
Yeah.
chocolate, go to Godiva. You came here for a cannabis product, so let me give you a cannabis product. Yes, what my marketing friends would say, it does have to taste good. We know that. It has to be aesthetic. We know that. But can't cannabis be all those things? I think at first people, without doing the deprogramming of cannabis shame from your entire life of being told this is an illicit drug, it takes you a while to build that respect that, yeah, you know what, it can be all those things. So my instruction as I worked with my team as I built it was, you can't mask the taste. You have to figure out how to enhance it. And so now all of a sudden we find ourselves with these award-winning products that actually taste like cannabis, with, to me, the crown jewel of that being our strain specific gummies. Because when I say strain specific, I know lots of people like to throw that term around. I mean, the only flavor and color in the gummy is the rosin. So when you taste this gummy, if it says gargoyle melonberry, if it says papaya, that is the cannabis strain. And of course, like a good hash maker, we put the name of the farm and our name on there together. So you know that flower came from the farm, was washed with ice water to capture that awesome 6-star hash. And we figured out how to decarboxylate that, add heat while keeping all those terpenes in, so that when you taste that gummy and you smell the flower, you know that you're tasting that flower. That was important to me. I definitely had to have some culinary help to achieve it, but mission accomplished.
Love that, and you answered pretty much most of my next question. But I want to go off on a lot of the things obviously the systematic approach to the quality is obviously remarkable. But are there other competitors or other companies that are focusing so heavily on the quality of the product that you guys are focusing on? And has that been a challenge to kind of compete with them, or are you pretty much doing what most aren't?
We are pretty much doing what most aren't, unfortunately. And I say that really because I'd rather it be a competitive landscape of everybody being truthful to the cannabis plant, because I put the industry before my personal needs. Unfortunately, most people are just doing booth distillate products. That's 90% of what we see in the dispensary. There are others that are doing clean cannabis. There are others who are doing solventless. There are other people that care, but it's not the majority. And in fact, because it's not the majority, what's happened is our biggest challenge now is educating the consumer into our value proposition, right? And what makes that doubly hard is this is an emerging industry, but it's not like an emerging industry like, let's say, technology, where it's new. It's one that already is coming with some hair on it, with some stigma on it that I also have to work through. So when push comes to shove, you see this distillate gummy that is cheap to make, right? Where somebody literally took a melt and pour gummy, sprinkled THC in it. You see my handcrafted product, and I'm trying to get a couple bucks more for it. All the bud tender says is potency, potency. We are still, from a consumer education point of view, from even a retail management point of view, we're still stuck in prohibition mindset. You would not walk into a bar or a Bevmo and say, give me the most potent stuff, right? They don't even sell moonshine anymore, right? You would say,
Yep.
give me something that is well crafted. You might say something, give me something that's cheap. I want cheap vodka in a plastic bottle. Okay, we got that. I need Grey Goose. We got that. There's tiers to this. Whereas in a dispensary right now, everybody's premium because the consumer is so woefully uneducated that they can get away with it. Another thing I've realized, especially as I've been starting to work with other people in states for my consulting business, I realize, oh, the reason why they're getting away with it is people are still so enamored with just walking through the doors of a dispensary. It's still a big deal, right? And in Florida, you guys have the vertically integrated system, so it's not as flashy as it is in California and
Mhm.
Colorado and Oregon. But when you go to these like California, you go in, it looks like a mini mall of just all these branded, colorful products, and nobody
Oh
knows
yeah.
what's going on. And
Yep.
marketers are just spin doctoring. So
Mhm.
it's a hard environment. My investors are, a little bit put off because I spent a lot of their money educating people, and it's like educating to avoid. And instead of people being my righteous competitors talking truth, they're all racing to the bottom, working cogs and saying whatever the hell they want because they can get away with it. Because right now we still have an uneducated consumer that's so excited just to have safe access. So
Yeah.
it's been lots
Would,
of
would
learnings, lots of
yeah,
learnings.
would you yeah, and like would you say, that's one of the biggest challenges, moving forward in this cannabis industry, or is that an opportunity kind of positive come out of, the unknown?
I know right now it is an opportunity. So, just shameless plug. I am firmly moved into Gee Rort Consulting. I specifically focus on clean cannabis formulations and premium cannabis differentiators. And yeah, it's a white space. It's weird that it is because we came out of prohibition where we had no tools, and that should have been the only products that came out first. But as money came in, they said we're the first. I remember the first time I heard the concept of CODs, or how are we going to scale this up? And when you start thinking in that mindset, it's not necessarily the most abundant mindset. It's definitely not a farm to table mindset. And so the majority of folks went down that way. And like now I find myself in this white space where I can say to my clients, like, the best form of innovation right now is the same innovation that we're seeing already in the food world, that we're seeing in other CPG. Consumers want things that they make them feel good about their purchase, sustainable, good for the environment, good for my body, regenerative, farm to table. All these buzzwords that we hear in other consumer products apply directly, and they are big time missing in cannabis, right? So I'm like, yeah, when I tell you that I have premium differentiators to offer you, I do. Are they simple and kind of back to basics? Surprise, surprise. But it's not what everybody else is doing.
Yep, yep. I think, as years continue, I think hopefully, there'll be more, education, and they'll, even with you in the consulting company, there'll be more people that will understand. So, but yeah, I want to pivot a little bit. Obviously, as like, a CEO, you got to have really good leadership qualities, especially in, the cannabis industry, with there's just so much changing. I want to, like learn, how have you really applied your leadership style and your qualities into your company, and just personally, building your teams and where you're at today.
Yeah, it's a great question. So just to give you a little background on myself, I was in the Navy. And I think the military breaks people into leadership, right? Like
Mhm.
we're all, even from the minute you are in boot camp, you're being picked to run details. You're always being seen, put in a position to show that you can lead a small team to then lead bigger teams. right? And the thing about the military is it's always about the team. As I finally got into industry and as I've evolved and so on, and then when I first got out, I became an assistant director, which is like the shop foreman on a movie set. Another critical leadership role where you're taking information in from the top and then you need to marshal the crew. Okay. I think that a lot of CEOs that I've met that come from bigger that through like the Wharton Business School, no shame on the Wharton Business School, are really thinking about being business leaders, not leaders of people. I'm a
Hmm.
leader of people. My team always comes first. And the way I translated that for my P&L Wharton folks, for my CFOs of the world, was the largest thing on your balance sheet is your payroll. We can automate till the days come. We're always going to have these persons that we need to pay for. So if I can get 10% out of my people more because they are bought in, because they are highly motivated and engaged in our mission, I'm getting 10% more than any other place I could
Yeah,
invest in to get out of. It's
it's
the people.
huge.
So
It's
I
huge.
lead
Yeah.
people. I get people to buy in. You can hear I'm passionate. I'm very
Mhm.
centered on my mission. If you are, first of all, I should also pat Papa and Barkley on the back. We've had very low turnover in an environment where there's nothing but turnover in cannabis. It's notorious for that. Yet we have folks that have been with us since day one, 8 years going. And at one point at our height, we were 250 people. Right now we're at about 105, and I would say at least 20 of them have been there for more than 6 years, right? We do canniversaries. We're very engaged. We're a real
Mhm.
wellness company. So in leading people, we switched up our PTO because I got people so engaged they weren't taking time off. They were coming to work sick. And then I realized,
Wow.
oh, well, I'm going to have structured breaks, what we call unplugged, where the entire company unplugs, not just one person off, but everybody off. Rule, nobody sends an email, so everybody's forced to step back so that when they come back to work, no work has piled up, no emails have been missed because we all disconnected and unplugged. Those are the kinds of wellness things that, in terms of leading people, that I engaged in that I thought were intuitive for a cannabis company. We have an opportunity as a new emerging industry that could be as big as tobacco, big as alcohol, hopefully as big as pharma. We have a paradigm shift here. I often like to say, if Steve Jobs took out the suit and put in the turtleneck into the boardroom, I want to put the hoodie into the boardroom. You know what I mean? I want to shift the business paradigm and show that it can be done differently in a more people centric way, right? Focus on your folks, get them bought in, get them on the mission, have them hold you accountable to that mission. And I think that consumers will see that when they look under the hood, and that kind of vibe will be contagious, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
so yeah, I mean, that's from a leadership perspective, focus and leading people is no, like, I mean, it'd be so much easier just to be a CFO and look at the numbers, because the numbers don't
Mhm.
lie. They're very straightforward, and you can always get back to it's just the numbers. When you deal
Mhm.
with people, it's squishier and takes a little
Yeah.
bit more. I was not this gray 8 years ago. I can tell you that.
Nah, you look good, but no, you're right. It is black and white, and I think it's tough. And I like have the experience, high performing teams. I think that's so important to have that culture. I love how you mentioned, like, the whole company goes in kind of like a quiet period. They take time off and they really like reflect, and I think that's really great because it's so hard, especially just in the corporate world, if you're not an entrepreneur and you're working for somebody else, to really say you need time off. And I think people are just so working so hard. So I love that. I love creating that space. But yeah, no, I'm curious, like some of the obstacles that you faced, or your team in the last couple of years, let's say. What was a big obstacle that you remember that took you a while to overcome, and what did you really learn from that as a business owner?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the hardest lessons I had to learn was the notion of sell in and the time it takes to ramp a product, right? So,
Mhm.
of course, learned all the lessons of lead time and timing and launch timing and whatnot. But then, as you're doing your model and you launch this product that you believe is going to have traction, that ramp up is real. Like, we have 1,000 stores in California. It's not like we launch a product and we're in 1,000 stores right away. It takes time, and we're constantly opening doors with those products. And as we open doors, we get product in. Then by the time you're in your 200, 300 doors, then you start to get the reorders, and we start to see the sell through, and we build. And so really understanding that nuance so that I could build a proper model and set better expectations on the outcome of those launches is important. We've launched over 50 individual SKUs easily with some flavor iterations in there. And so every time we launched a product in the beginning, it was just like, waiting for it to get traction and not knowing whether it was doing well. And it was just that ramp up period. Also, I think I've learned that salespeople will get in their own way if you let them. And so compartmentalizing your sale, when you manufacture your products and you sell your products, there should be a very hard wall between the people that manufacture and R&D that product and the people that sell it. The people that sell it need to be armed with the differentiators and the why. They don't need to know what happened, what went wrong. They don't need to know what might be wrong, or they don't need any detractors because that will weigh on them and it'll prevent from overcoming objections.
Yep, 100%. And it's away from their big goal, their big responsibility is, to sell and to get in front of potential, customers and clients. So I completely agree. In terms of, just the cannabis industry, obviously it's constantly evolving. How do you, stay ahead of the curve, and how are you adapting to just different legal changes and regulatory landscape adjustments?
I feel like we had to learn that early on. So you roll with the punches, right? And as a veteran, true cannabis industry, I've been doing it for years now. Like the California rules around 215 with the threat of jail, so you knew you had to kept buttoned up, right? So understanding the gray market outlaw rules, if you will, were already so onerous and difficult. By the time we had licensing, it just was only getting easier. But I can tell you that even when California was licensed, we used to do things that we call like we sticker gate, where all of a sudden we'd have this product and then we'd go to a shop and they'd be like, oh, well, wait, the DCC was here and they said that it needs to be done like this. And sure enough, we'd have to take product and sticker it again and just roll with those punches because, yeah, as an emerging industry, especially one that has all this stigma on it, there's always this CYA action on the part of regulators, right? So all of a sudden in the middle of the night, you're going to get this one line comes out and it's like going forward or as of, and of course, because they have zero respect for us as an industry, it's not like other places where it's like as of January 1st. It'll be like, no, 2 weeks from now, as of today, starting Monday. And it's like, bro, what about the millions of dollars of inventory I have? No, that's not hyperbole. Here in California and Colorado, many times regulations were dropped in the midnight hour that would be so disruptive as to cause you to literally lose money. And we did lose money at times, right? So I think that the only way you have to be nimble. So if anybody's listening, thinking about getting in cannabis, until we have the end of federal prohibition, until we start to get some basic federal guidelines and states are not just all wild, wild west, you need to come into it with a nimble regulatory attitude. I think if not in your C-suite, but definitely at a high executive level, having somebody, what we call government affairs in our company is super important. We have a gentleman that one engages with my local community because, of course, at first, just having a manufacturer, even though any other community I go into and I say I'm going to create 200 jobs, I'm getting a tax break. I got a new tax levied against me, cannabis tax, and they're always thinking I'm doing wrong. Police always up in the mix. This was back in the day. Obviously, it's cooled down a lot more after 8 years going. I'm a big friend of the town because I ingratiate myself in the community. I was so happy about legalization that I was older at this point too in California. I just decided to bend the knee. When we came to Eureka, I was just like, I'm just happy to work together. I'm just happy to join the Chamber of Commerce. I just want to be part of the community. I just want to create jobs. How do we get it done? And that attitude helped.
Yeah.
Our first government affairs officer, John O'Connor, the way he used to do it, he was just like, you just got to give them what they want. And so whenever we'd have an inspection, he would put everything in binders and he would just lay out like a dozen binders and just kill them with information, overwhelm them with how buttoned up we were. And so,
That's awesome.
yeah, just be ready to be nimble and be ready to bend the knee because we're not liked yet. It's still federally prohibited, and maybe you'll find a community that's super embracing, but odds are you'll find a community that at the very least is ignorant and therefore scared, and that will be manifest as resistance.
Yeah. And I think it's just, an unfortunate situation, but I love the approach you took, really diving into the community, understanding, your why, your vision, why doing this. And ultimately, it comes from a place of, just providing value and helping others. And that's really good because, it takes courage to be humble enough, especially as a founder, to do that. So I think, I applaud you for that. But yeah, a couple more questions. I'm curious, just with all the interest of, different CBD products on the market, what advice would you give somebody, a consumer looking to navigate the market and find really high quality products?
Right. So the first thing is, one, accept that we were lied to. Like, I want to stay, and I want to qualify that because of the times we live in. I'm a patriot. I served, but government is not perfect. Misinformation happens, and for years we were lied to. More patriotic than serving in the military, I feel like advocating for cannabis. To me, the difference between an outlaw and a criminal is an outlaw stands outside the law because they believe it's unjust and they work for change. That is the beauty of America. We work for change. We got change, but we all have to do our work. Just to be emancipated and claimed legal doesn't mean that everybody's mind is changed. That's not how it works. So we all have to do that personal work and be like, oh, okay, I was misinformed. I need to get the right information. The minute you are ready to get the right information, first thing you'll realize is, wait, hemp and cannabis, they're the same. They're either all cannabis or all hemp. There is one that we can grow for like paper and fiber and seed oils. And then there is one that has all these beautiful little crystals on it and has all this awesome medicinal medicine, regardless of whether it's THC or CBD. So the artificial separation of hemp CBD or cannabis CBD is a false narrative that the feds have put into our world to make it even more divisive. So I would hope that's the first thing that somebody can see. It's like, oh, they're still not really wanting to share the truthful information, still federally prohibited, still using divisive terms. The hemp bill should have made this t-shirt hemp. It should have given us more seed oils and foodstuffs for livestock. It should have given us more hemp seeds and proteins in our food. Instead, what we got was this weird CBD business, legal national CBD business, and then worse, these isomers of delta and delta 10. That's not what the hemp bill was supposed to do. That's what we got, and it furthers the fracturing of the medicinal cannabis plant. So that's that first knowledge that they would need to come into. So then on with that, as you're looking for products, CBD, THC, or otherwise, you're looking for something that has more plant medicine. So on the CBD side, when you think about a company like Charlotte's Web, they do lipid infusion just like we do in Papa Barkley. Our national products are just like our California products, where we soak the flowers, real flowers that you might want to break up and smoke, but we soak them in oil. We strain off the biomass, and that green yummy tincture, that's the good stuff. That's what goes in our capsules. That's what makes our balm. That's what goes in our tincture. That's a true medicinal product because cannabis is more than its component parts. We know this definitively. Some of the little science we have, especially coming after, rest in peace, Dr. Meshulam, we know that cannabinoids in our body work in tandem. A1 and A2 cannabinoids need to work together, open and soften that lock, right? And so CBD, THC, and other cannabinoids work together. So isolated cannabinoid compounds, just like bad protein, just slip through your body. Like that's not real, right? And that's what we're selling most people. And that's why I feel like people are taking these products like, it doesn't work, another gimmick, and they
Yeah.
move on,
hmm
right?
hmm
So if you're looking for a medicine, you're looking for a plant medicine. So whatever the modality is, gummy, capsule, tincture, make sure how much plant is in there.
hmm
It'll be obvious. Oil should be like the second ingredient. And there should be few ingredients because this plant was put here for us by nature. And the way we know that is because the trichomes are on the outside. The medicine is not stuck in the leaf. That's why we don't need any chemicals. That's why I'm a champion of clean cannabis. You literally, all you need to do is shake it. The crystals will come off. That's why in ancient history, if you go all the way back to whether it's like traditional hash in Europe, which was just basically sieved, when you go back to India and you think about bang, which is basically milk fat and cannabis, so the fats, that's a lipid infusion. Those are the ancient ways of using cannabis because the medicine is right there up front and presented to you. The minute you see nano, the minute you see distillate, the minute you see something that's clear, no, they've over refined it to an active pharmaceutical ingredient. Yes, that's scalable. Yes, that makes everything, consistent. But consistency doesn't mean efficacy, right? So looking for plant in the medicine, seeing the plant medicine, it should be obvious, is how you know that you're getting a good cannabis formulation, whether it's CBD rich or THC rich.
Gotcha. Love it. See the plant, fewer ingredients, the better. And I think even with food too, like people don't really look at like labels or forget calories and all that. They don't even look at like what the hell is in what they're eating. And I
Yeah.
think even in America, everything is so processed. So it's ridiculous. But yep, find the plant and fewer ingredients. So love that. So, in terms of, just the future, obviously, your company, Papa Barkley, it's remarkable how much it's grown over the years. But really, what excites you the most about just the cannabis industry and then growing your company even more than where it is today?
Well, what excites me about cannabis and Papa Barkley being a leader in our, what's always excited me. I'm a student of Jack Herer. I believe that cannabis rises at the time we need it, and I think right now, if you look at the state of the world, we all need to chill more than ever. We all need to sleep a little bit more. We all need to temper our anxiety. Cannabis is right there for us, a natural, non-toxic, non-addictive medicine. Like, let's just look at the data. Let's look about the real thing. We're drinking and fighting our way into the ground. I'm not a prohibitionist. I like a gargle just like the next person, but let's have some real talk. Right now, we talk about, you'll hear this saber rattling, even in California from a Democrat about, oh, we can't have these things marketed to children. It's like, really? Right now, in an average household, there's a bottle of liquor that is not childproof that could kill you if you
Yep.
were to drink it all.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, can't say it enough, zero deaths associated with cannabis overdosing. There is no such thing as cannabis overdosing. 100% of the people that run to the hospital because they're paranoid, almost instantly upon crossing the threshold and having the nurse tell them to sit down and wait, calm down, because it's just a psychosomatic of like,
Yep.
I'm so paranoid because this is a crazy illicit drug and I've never felt this way, right? So those are real facts. That data is in, and we should just breathe that in. So I'm still on the same mission that I've been on for 25 years ago, the normalization of cannabis, the truth of it. I just want the truth to come out. And it's so funny. When I grew up, I'm probably a little older than you, we had like encyclopedias and we had to dig for information. Now we all have supercomputers in our pockets, right? However, it occurred to me, it is still hard to get good information because as information has gotten easier to access, what has risen? Misinformation. So it's
Yep.
just as hard for me. I still have to do just as much research as I did going to the encyclopedia to get real information because I got to sort through all the bullshit to find out what's what, right? And right now, I'm still on that mission of like, I want to bring the truth of this magical plant to bear. And this is beyond the medicinal industry because you already kind of heard me say it. My next real step is like, I love cotton, but I like hemp too. And we know, even though I know there's some closed loop cotton producing apparatus, but for years we were dumping an inordinate amount of chemicals to refine and wash our cannabis, and hemp just doesn't need that. If you guys want to go on YouTube and Google hemp biofuel running diesel engines with almost no refining, another fact. Why are we not producing more hemp oil? Soy oil is great, but just because it's subsidized shouldn't be the only reason why you grow it. Or more importantly, hello, US government, how about we subsidize the growing of hemp? Not just give us a hemp bill, start giving these farmers money. It saved us once, it'll save us again. Hemp for Victory, which those of you who don't know, it's in Jack Herer's book. Hemp for Victory is a film that was produced in World War II by the US government because we needed the hemp plant at that time. And then subsequently, right after, disappeared from the Library of Congress until some advocates found it in the 70s and reintroduced it. So it saved us once, it's going to save us again, and we definitely need it now. So I'm still on that same journey of like letting everybody know, here is your alternative. If you need to relax with your family before you reach for that whiskey glass, which we see in every movie, every single cop procedural, lawyer
Yeah.
procedural, in there at work, they have no problem opening up the drawer and pouring out a drink. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
if you saw one of those people smoke, it would be like the end of the world still,
Yep.
right? So
Yep.
we have made progress, and I've been encouraged to celebrate the small wins, but that's what they are: small wins, small
Mm-hmm.
battles, and the just war without end on just trying to get this truth out.
Yeah. No, I think it's crazy. I mean, you look at all the Hollywood movies, and you're right. That's a great point. It's like nobody would ever, turn to cannabis or any other drug other than alcohol. So when crisis hits the fan, but
And
I
the
think
data
it's
data
yeah.
around alcohol, like I don't, I do drink, as we
Hmm.
all do, I guess, in our society, it's
Hmm.
normalized. But
Hmm.
the data is in. We know the
Yep.
damage that alcohol can. If anything should be childproofed and measured out, if there was
Hmm.
anything that should be limits on, imagine this. Right now, I go to in certain states, you go in and you can only buy an ounce of cannabis. Imagine a world where you could only buy, let's call it a 6-pack equivalent. So whether it's a fifth of alcohol, a 6-pack of beer, or a bottle of wine a
Hmm.
day, people would go fucking, excuse my language, would go
No,
crazy.
yep.
But that is what's needed,
Yep.
considering when you look at the data from just just the the vehicle with it, the domestic violence associated with it, the dysfunctions associated with it. Again, I would never want to alcohol, but
Hmm.
at the same time, I want just there to be truth. And for me, I've always said with cannabis, tax and regulate like alcohol would be the only fair thing. And in a way, you
Exactly.
should really
Yeah.
be giving us wellness incentives. And instead of prescribing Xanax and Zoloft and Ambien, maybe we could get some of that insurance money. I'm just saying.
Exactly. No, yeah, it's so quick to pharmaceutical drugs. They're so quick to put on those. But I want to I want to go into some, because we could talk about this all day. I'm having a great time learning a lot. But I want to go into some rapid fire questions, and then I'll give you some time to wrap up any final remarks. So I got 3 questions here. I usually ask them at the end. So the first one we got is, what do you feel are the key attributes of a successful entrepreneur?
Passion and vision are one, right? So you're being passionate about your vision, being disciplined enough to have a plan, and being centered enough to not take objections personally.
Yep, that's huge. Yep, putting the ego aside. Number 2, what is something that people think is important in business but doesn't matter that much?
Wearing a suit.
Yeah, yep. This is
That
the most
part.
yep, lever. I'll dress up. Collared shirt is it.
Yeah,
Yep,
where I think that yeah, wearing a suit is one, because I do think that there's certain business environments where they'll look at you sideways if you're not like wearing a typical business suit. And look, being in the military, I appreciate what uniforms do and all that. So I'm not really hating on it, but that is one. And then I think the other thing is, like, not everything has to be a PowerPoint presentation. It's
yeah,
like folks, for taking too much time in the presentation. Like in an internal presentation, dude, just show me black and white bullet points and let's move on. You took hours, technically hours I'm paying you for, to put together this nice PowerPoint. It's like, if it's a pitch deck and we're trying to raise money, then that's a sales tool. But if it's just to keep the flow moving with us, let's do that. Now, I will caveat that with, I'm not the most visual person when it comes to like doing the PowerPoints and whatnot. So maybe that's just my personal thing. But I've always found that, like, if you're not selling something, just give me the information and let's move on.
yep.
Let's save that time.
I couldn't agree more. It's like don't get a call if you can write an email. Like, how you got to evaluate how important that really is, and respect people's time. So
Yeah.
last one. What are the top 3 tips about business, entrepreneurship that you want our audience or your walk away with today?
Well, the first tip is one I've learned the hard way. Only take money that you need. Like, if you ever find yourself in the blessed position of an emerging business, or when they call, quote unquote, capital markets are hot, take the money you need. Make sure that when you write your business plan or you do your model, that you know what you need, you know the runway you need, you give yourself the cushion, and you want to grow your business organically. Taking in more money does not help. It dilutes. It runs the risk of a down round. It's not what it be. So I made that mistake, and I would not want anybody to make that mistake. It's like, yes, when you're capital raising, you need to raise capital, but at one point you should have a number on that, and a finite amount of capital based on your plan that you're going to execute on is what's needed. More capital is not better. It's just not. So that's one.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, a true entrepreneur has to also think of themselves like that, and you should know who those people are on your team. So ankling, I think that's the word, or holding back a potential entrepreneur can either be a mistake or a blessing, depending, right? So if you have somebody, especially this is typically in the executive suite, that wants a carve out, that wants to be passionate about something else, it is time. And the thing with executives is we don't punch a clock, and there's always this worry about where people's focus is, right? But real entrepreneurs are going to be entrepreneurs. And if you need that person on your team, like in my experience of marketers, right? I need this digital marketer there to do my performance marketing, to build my funnel and all this kind of stuff, right? And if they're doing that on the side, well, that makes me feel some type of way, but I need to temper that, right? Because if they're a true entrepreneur, then I'm getting miracles out of them. And if my needs are satisfied, do I really need to worry about what they're doing? It's a sticky wicket, but it's one to be interesting. It was a very similar thing on the hash team. I had hash makers; they were all making hash, and then these kids were then going home at night, smoking weed, drinking beer, and making hash at night, and then coming back the next day. And at one point, I was like, "Wait, this has got to slow down because hash making is an art." And like, I had to question, like, I want you guys to get 8 hours of real sleep so that when we come in the morning, we're all at our best making real hash. So I had to put my foot down there, right? Consequently, the young hatchmaker went on to do his own thing, and it's all good. It was amicable, but that's what it came down to. I was like, you can't. The staff loves you. That's a great thing because you're that guy, right? But we're all making hash here, and that's what I have this staff for. You all going and moonlighting does seem to affect my business. So as an entrepreneur, it's like, yeah, I want to honor that entrepreneurial spirit of you. So you got to go and do you, right? But with the performance marketer, it was like, no, you're actually refining your skill by doing more and more and more of it, right? And it's not really taking away from me. So that nuance of understanding the entrepreneur, of understanding those people on your team, and really recognizing it and knowing when to encourage it and allow it, and when to just say, well, you need to go and be an entrepreneur, I think is an important piece of business. And
Yeah.
then I think lastly, I think that everything in late stage capitalism should be done with intent. And I think that we all should be ready to stand accountable for our actions. The days of it wasn't me, the days of playing ignorant to the downsides of our business and entrepreneurial practices are over, right? If it was up to me, misinformation would be literally illegal. Like if you are caught willfully spreading misinformation, that is not good. It's like yelling fire, right? Similarly, if you know that your business practices are doing harm to the environment, others, or anything, the onus then is you to do right, right? At Papa Barkley, we have a motto. We always like to say best in class. And one day, when sales weren't right, some investor was like, "What does that even mean, best in class?" And I was like, "Well, what it really means is that you know better, you do better." I don't get criticism. I only get learnings, and I don't make mistakes. I only learn lessons, because if I did something wrong and you came to me, if the ego's in check, I'm going to hear you and I'm going to say, "Oh, wow, thanks for telling me that that's not correct. I will fix it," and then
Yeah.
continue to be best in class. Because best in class, kind of like GMP, CGMP, is it's constantly, as we learn more, we do better, right? So I went to a packaging conference. They asked me to speak, and I found out that, oh, my paper packaging isn't recyclable because the ink isn't recyclable, or it has plastic stabilizers in it. Well, I immediately went back to the marketing team and said, y'all need to figure out how to do it without these things and still make it look good. That's the challenge. Let's raise the bar, because now we know it's got to be sustainable. Yes, it has to look good and be a book cover, but it's also got to be sustainable. So I think that the days of feigning ignorance, of allowing marketing spin to go too far and become out of integrity, no. Especially if you're CEO, it all stops with you. And so the integrity of that company is on you. And if your marketing team is spinning yarn just to spin yarn, that's going to come back to you, and you should put a stop to it.
100%. And I think even, it's eating costs too. Like you want to look at a budget, especially if you're starting to scale a company a couple years into the market. I mean, you got to really evaluate what's going on. And I like, you mentioned, it's kind of like know what seat you are on in the bus, and like know your role and what you bring. And if you are entrepreneurial, then you might scale out of that 9 to 5 in that company, and you might want to go do your own thing. And I think a good CEO and founder can really bring that out of somebody. So yeah, I love that. But I want to wrap up. I want to talk about just your future, your consulting side of your company, and some future you have coming up in the horizon.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, I can't say too much, but a person explained to me this way. like the .com. First, we all started in our garages. I started in my garage, just like Steve Jobs did, right?
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden you have a boom where money is just flowing from the sky. And then that eventually pops, and then the professionals come in and pick up the pieces. I do feel like, especially in the more mature states, that we already are starting to see that leading edge of what I call cannabis 2 or 3.0, where the market in California is at the lowest it's ever been. People are picking up pieces. To that end, Papa Barkley likely will do some M&A action, and so that's going to be unknown future there. I have started Gee Rort Consulting specifically because I don't feel enough people are championing clean cannabis medicine. And in terms of just that as a premium differentiator, like you have a lot of companies out there talking about nano and talking about all these other things, and I'm like, I just want to help people do it the way grandma did it, like those clean formulations where I can take the plant and with literally the tools in your kitchen, make awesome chocolates, awesome gummies, infused pre-rolls, great ice water hash, all of it without using a chemical. The only chemical you need is alcohol to just wipe things down and sterilize it, right? And of course, no preservatives, no stabilizers, no emulsifiers. To your point about everything in America being processed, it's like there's a way to process stuff without putting some of these untoward excipients in. All of them usually ladder up to things like shelf stability. I used to hate the rules that they put on us, right? The over testing, the shelf, the 1 year expiration date. But those things are a bar that now, once I've crossed them as a business person, I'm like, yeah, everybody should do that. Because I can tell you, my stuff and the stuff in California is the cleanest thing you can put in and on your body because it's over tested to just the nth, right? Not just for cannabis, but for all these pesticides, all these different things that yeah, they think might be in the cannabis, but it ends up being, most of the time we get in trouble is because some ingredient, some oil, some other ingredient we tried to source stuff, and we test in final form, it pops, right? I also love the 1 year shelf thing because while that's atypical, because most times companies produce a shit ton, get it out in the first 6 months, and then it still has a year and a half minimum on shelf to sell through. We only have to do that in a year, which does affect our scaling. But what it also does is allow me to put no preservatives, no emulsifiers, and give you really a natural, fresh product that does expire in a year naturally because I did nothing weird to try to keep it shelf stable, right? So as much as I first kick back on those rules as like, oh, y'all are just trying to demonize me again or make my job even harder. Now that I've crossed that bar, I'm like, yeah, let's raise that bar for all goods. Let's let consumers know that that's how we get over processing out, is like things just can't last forever and ever and ever, right?
Mhm.
Because we don't want those forever and ever chemicals that make that happen, right? So that's how I think about it.
Yeah, no, I love it, and it seems like you're definitely taking a great approach. Just building that product roadmap, enhancing it even more, and being able to adapt when you need to. So
Yeah.
with any
So
business, that's important.
yeah, and so going forward, P&B, I'm glad that the brand is, it's pretty much stuck, and we are starting to now finally go multi-state. A lot of people are like, oh, why aren't you on the states? Well, it's because one, when we first started, there were no contract manufacturers, so we had to build our own facility. So I definitely learned a lot about manufacturing and building out manufacturing facilities, and that was awesome. Also, built a team around that and learned from them. But as we go to other states, not a lot of people are doing even the basic keef, for Christ's sake. Never mind ice water hash and lipid infusion. They all just thought, oh, I'm just going to get this CO2 apparatus or this BHO apparatus. So I can press a button, the extract will come out, and then we'll make product. And I'm like, no, we need to level up. So as we've gone to other states, it's taken a while for solventless to catch on, but it's getting faster, right? Because even in New York, as an emerging state, in New Jersey already, I've talked to partners there that are like, we're doing solventless from day one, right? There will be contract manufacturers, and so as my consulting company is building, it's like I also offer this notion of asset light. So when we first started, licensing was the hardest part, right? But in branding, typically you're passionate about a brand, you have a story you want to tell, and you don't want to be bogged down by all those things. Well, it is possible, especially in California, Oregon, Washington, Colorado, maybe some other of the emerging states, where we can find a contract manufacturer, find a distributor, and you can find yourself holding a brand and not actually holding a cannabis license, just basically working with key formulators like myself to make sure that you have a quality product being formulated at facility X, working with that right distributor. You may hold a sales and marketing team, which I would definitely recommend. And then that marketing team and that sales team can engage with the retailers, do promotional marketing, all that kind of stuff, and drive traffic to the retailer for your product. But in terms of getting your product from the co-manufacturer to the retailer in a compliant license form, you don't have to hold a license, right? So all that kind of learnings and cannabis passion is boiled into Gee Rocourt Consulting, which you can find at geerocourt.com, GUYROCOURT. Of course, you can definitely check everything I've built out at Papa and Barkley, P&B Kitchen, and Papa Select, which are our sub brands. Papa Select's our award-winning ice water hash. P&B Kitchen is our high-end line of gummies and chocolate. And of course, Papa and Barkley is our wellness suite of products, topicals, tinctures, patches, bombs, and most recently our sports bomb stick with menthol, which apparently is flying off the shelves, which I'm very happy about. This last product I did. And that was that scale in that I was telling you about. It's like people love it. The response is overwhelming, but it's like every week I'm like, how many doors were you now? How many doors were you now? Like,
Yep.
just actually
Jeez.
physically getting it on shelf does have
Yep.
a certain amount of time. So yeah, that's a little bit
Love
about
it.
me. Definitely folks who want to get into the cannabis industry, I'm here to advise. My passion is I don't care what you want to do. I just want to help you do it right. Even though I'm passionate about clean cannabis, I also drink Bud Light. There is a reason for price conscious products, and Bud Light is the most selling beer. I would never tell you that I, as a premium formulator, think that my products will be the highest selling. It's not what I'm going after. I'm going after the best. People will most often spend with their price point, and we know this. Those traditional CPG rules still apply. But if you're looking to make premium products, I can make it. If you're looking for advice, whether it's from good, better, best, I'm there as well.
Love it. Love it. And I think, I'm really excited, obviously to see your journey. And I'm really looking forward to hopefully you doing some more speaking engagements too, and eventually traveling with the consulting as that, continues to grow and, see workshops and conferences that you can do. So.
Yeah, in April, if you're around, I know you're on the East Coast. I'm doing MJ Unpacked, which I'm excited. It's going to be my first MJ Unpacked. They haven't figured out I just realized I may have missed an introductory call. Now that I just realized it. But I think I'm going to do something in the manufacturing track and something in the retail track, probably panels. But at BizCon last November, I did get a solo track to speak specifically about clean cannabis, and that was fun. And thought leadership is something that I just do willingly because I'm an advocate first. It's like if you told me, hey, we can make the cannabis industry exactly as you envision it, but you won't have a job, I would do it.
I love it. And that's how you really lead and grow and scale a company. So that passion forward. So, but it's been having you on the show today, Gee, and really just learning your journey. I'm super inspired. I took so many notes. I got 3 pages filled. So I would be definitely, I encourage everybody to go back and, listen to this again. I think the biggest thing is, really just do your research and really, do your due and everything, but specifically what you're putting in and on your body, it's so important. So, but yeah, it's been an honor to have you, and I look forward to seeing your journey grow within your company and seeing you expand this year. So,
awesome, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well, this is another edition of Scale and Secrets podcast. Until next time, guys.